So Tolkien fans will complain that Tom Bombadil was not in the film, but honestly, that is one of the smartest adaptation decisions a filmmaker ever made. So let's talk about why that's the case. Start out, in the book, Tom Bombadil appears very early in the story, right after the hobbits leave the Shire. He appears for a couple chapters as they're just starting their journey, saves them from the Old Willow, then when they're captured by the Bear Whites, then he just disappears from the story, only to be mentioned in the Council of Elrond, and then at the end of the story. What a lot of Tolkien fans don't realize is that Tom Bombadil, while he's a very memorable character, an amazing part of the story in the legend of the Lord of the Rings, but he doesn't really bring anything of importance to the story, and you're dealing with trying to make around a 3-hour long movie. His scenes, while enjoyable, really comes down to a break in the story, which works well in a book. A book is paced in a different way than a movie. Just like in the book, how you have 17 years in between the first and second chapter, and how that really wouldn't work in the movie, where it has to be more about haste. Just like how in the book, Frodo figures out that he needs to leave the Shire, but it's not until his birthday the following year when he sells Bag End and he moves closer to the Tooks. That's when he leaves the Shire. But in the movie, if they did that, it would lose the hasteness. You have a dangerous object here, you need to get it out of the Shire as fast as you can. Instead it's because, well, I'll get out of the Shire eventually. And yes, it plays a little bit in the book of this idea that he probably should have left sooner, but he didn't. And that's how books work. In the book, there's moments where they're just enjoying walking through the meadows. In the movies, you can't really have too much of those. You can have some moments of just appreciation, but it has to keep at pace. Like, this is not a story that's all about taking your time. It's a story about we must destroy the ring as fast as possible. And so you have to cut out anything like Tom Bombadil that has this, stops the story for a couple chapters so you can have this dancing man come in and brighten up your day. Or definitely in the extended edition, you have a little bit more of just adding in scenes about the Song of Beren and Luthien and just other deeper stories going on. You also have to remember that Tolkien wrote the Lord of the Rings with wanting to write the Silmarillion. He put people like Tom Bombadil in, the story of Beren and Luthien in, as this is the story he actually wants to tell. He wanted to tell the tales from the Silmarillion, but he couldn't, and so he wrote the Lord of the Rings instead. He loved the Lord of the Rings as well. That was his goal. His goal was, if I slip enough of these in, maybe they'll eventually just allow me to put out the Silmarillion. And it did end up working somewhat in his favor. Not fully, but in the end, the Silmarillion did come out eventually, so mission accomplished. But you can't have all those legends taken away from the story of the movie. The other thing is that Tom Bombadil, because he's a creature that is above Sauron and creatures like that, the ring doesn't take effect on him. It would take away from the story that suddenly have it, so you're building up this idea that this ring is really powerful, and then you just suddenly have a character who just is not affected at all by the ring. It would take away from what the message you were trying to get at in the movie of, this ring is dangerous, we must destroy this ring. So with that being said, I will have to bring up something that is important to the story. I've been trying to work on in my videos. I'm not bringing up myself as much in my videos, but I'm going to bring them now quickly here so you guys understand. I'm a Tolkien nerd, and so I love those stories. I've read the Lord of the Rings more than 20 times and the Silmarillion at least 10. So I know the story and I love the character Tom Bombadil. But I'm also fascinated in filmmaking, so I understand where filmmaking comes from and script writing and how you have to learn to take out characters and scenes in movies when they're not needed. And the truth is, I highly respect what Peter Jackson did here, where he took out Tom Bombadil for the reason that it shows that he understood the source material enough to know that's why Tom Bombadil is in there. What he represents in the Lord of the Rings is he's a deeper character than just this main story that's being told here. In the movie, Peter Jackson keeps to that story, but he does it through showing Minas Morgul and just places like that, ancient stories like that, even again in the extended edition having that moment of the Song of Beren and Luthien, just showing that there is a deeper thing here, but without having to have that the character Tom Bombadil. So when it comes down to it is, if they made a TV show adaptation of The Lord of the Rings, should they have Tom Bombadil in it? 100%. I would love to see a good adaptation of Tom Bombadil. But when it comes down to it, a movie that's trying to just be 3 hours long, Tom Bombadil would take away from that story. Tom Bombadil was supposed to slow down the story. He's written for a book and not for a film. If you were making a TV show, TV shows are written in a way that's closer to a book. In the way of, you can have that slower, let's stop the story for a little bit and just enjoy life. Let's have a party here. Let's just enjoy life for a few minutes. Have dancing sheep. The craziness that is Tom Bombadil. Love that character. But in a movie, if you just had suddenly, the Black Riders after you, and then suddenly, let's have some dancing sheep, it's going to take away from the story to do that. But the point is that Tom Bombadil was a fun part of the book, but he wasn't a necessary part that needed to be brought into the movie. And so yes, I agree, it would have been nice to see Tom Bombadil, but we didn't need to, and I would have, as an inspiring filmmaker, even as a Tolkien fan, would have been more like, why did you bother putting him in the first place? I would have been more like that because I understand that he's not necessary to the movie's side of the story. So with that being said, hate me in the comments, but know that if you're hating on me for the fact that Tom Bombadil is not in the movie, I somewhat agree with you and as a Tolkien fan, and somewhat don't agree with you as a fan of films. So I'm straight in the middle of both camps of wanting Tom Bombadil and not wanting Tom Bombadil, so yay to that. If you want to see more videos like this on the channel, consider subscribing. This has been the Movie Night Reviewer, Peter Wary, signing off.